Okay, hello. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Tali and I'm from Common Sense Education, and I am absolutely delighted to be joined by my colleague Sue. Sue, do you
Hello,
want to introduce
everyone.
yourself? Yeah.
I'm just Sue, and I'm here today from Los Angeles, California, joining you all to talk about digital life dilemmas.
Excellent. So yes, digital life dilemmas. So in the next 12 minutes or so, we're going to talk about what digital dilemmas are, how they foster critical thinking and student engagement, which to me is always the goal and what we're looking for. And we're going to infuse throughout how and where you can use them. But at the end, we'll show you where everything is directly on our site. So with that, just to start us off, what is a digital dilemma? So really, these are tricky situations that are happening in digital life. They don't have clear answers. There's no clear right or wrong. And the reason they're so important to discuss with our students is that we're really recognizing how complex some of these situations are that our students are facing. And in a classroom environment, or a small group setting, you can really come up with thoughtful, with realistic steps, and you've got adult and peer mentorship. So if you're anything like me, you might say, great, I love dilemmas, but they can be tricky. How do you really moderate them, facilitate them? And that's where we have these thinking routines that are really designed to have that structure to help students build these skills and habits of mind. So Sue, can you walk us through some of the examples? Oh, you're muted.
Of course we are. Thank you. So when we are faced with these dilemmas in the classroom, we are given a scenario, and these thinking routines, as we call them, it's almost like a process. It's a step-by-step process by which we are guiding our kids through, and we are teaching them how to kind of deconstruct this dilemma and examine it, stop, examine it from different points of view, try to consider our options. There's a whole set of steps that we follow. So for example, in my life, so, yeah, as I am as an adult, sometimes I feel a little overwhelmed by the amount of tasks, by the dings, by the devices that I've got going on. Maybe it's time to stop and do the process of a digital habits checkup, right? So that's just one example, and we could show you how to do a digital habits checkup. And then we have one called, a feelings and options type thinking routine that's intended to support the social and emotional skills of walking through a process. And Tali, we have a third one here that's really intended to think about the third one here is about taking a stand when you are faced kind of with a moral dilemma. For example, I want to support this issue. I really have a strong feeling about this issue. What are the ways in which I can show my support of a civics, type issue without, maybe necessarily, being hurtful toward others? Or, if there's a way that I might be able to show my engagement and show it in a real and meaningful way. How do I do that? So that would be our take a stand routine, to sit down and think about what those things might be.
So you know what, Sue, let's jump into one of the thinking routines. We're going to look at a dilemma right now, and we're going to focus on that feelings and options one, which again is really about that social and emotional setting. So we're going to look at an embarrassing story. Sue, can you read us this story?
I'll read you this one. I won't tell you my own embarrassing stories. Okay, so in this one, we have a guy named Daryl, and Daryl is recording a humiliating video of Jared and posted it on his story for everyone to see. So posted it on Instagram. Jared was mortified and asked Daryl to please stop and take that video down. But Daryl didn't listen. He thought the video was funny. And plus, a lot of people were commenting and saying Daryl was hilarious. He's getting a lot of accolades for posting it. By the next day, it seemed like everyone at school had seen the video, and Jared tried to act like it didn't bother him, but he was really embarrassed and went straight home after school instead of going to the basketball game that he and his friends had intended to go to. So this situation is something that I think many of you as educators or as parents have witnessed or seen a version of this, where kids are posting something that's embarrassing.
Exactly. And so we're going to kind of talk through the steps of having a discussion about this. Just a note here, whenever you're using any of our dilemmas, you can always change the names. Like I love, Sue, how you added, posted it on Instagram. You might even add those specific details to make it resonate more for your students. And you can always change the details too. The whole idea is that this works for you and your community. So there's 4 parts of the feelings and options thinking routine. The first one is you're identifying who are the different people involved in the scenario, what dilemma or challenge are they facing. So we've got Daryl and Jared, right? And really the goal here is we're inviting students to slow down and reflect what actually happens. So often in the digital world, it's like react, react, react. And this is like, let's slow down and think. And then the second part is really inviting students to take other people's perspectives. So what is each person in the dilemma feeling? Why is the situation hard or challenging for each of them, right? So it might feel a little more clear cut, Sue. Jared's embarrassed. Got it. That makes sense. What about Daryl? How might he be feeling? And why is it important for us to think about his perspective?
Right. Daryl in this situation, I'm sure many of you, have done something that perhaps, you get a lot of positive reaction for, but do you feel guilty about this, right? Maybe Daryl is feeling guilty or challenged in some way for doing it at Jared's expense, right? And so I'm sure that's a very complex situation for Daryl. If we're able to help our students see that and articulate the complexities, maybe they see things that we don't. So having them kind of tease out what is the challenge, who is involved, and then how might people be feeling in this situation? That's what we want our students to really kind of be able to articulate in our classroom and think through all these different positions.
And also the reason you want to be able to take other people's perspectives is because then the third part is you're imagining the different options. So this is really where you're brainstorming, coming up with as many ideas as possible. So the kind of only guiding principle here is that you're looking for options that are going to lead to the most positive outcome for as many people involved as possible. And this you might do in small groups, or you might do it using a virtual tool. You might use, a Jamboard or a Padlet for students to kind of share their responses and ideas.
Yeah, so when I facilitated this the other day, I did the first 2 on a Menti. I had them do a word cloud with the feelings. I had them identify using the Menti in an open-ended question. I've done this on a Padlet, and I had them pair and share when they were doing this brainstorming, thinking about the options that they might be able to use in this situation.
I love that. And my favorite part is probably the last part to say, when you figure out, okay, what option do we want to go with? And then you really break it down. How is it going to be communicated? Is it in person? Is it over text? Is it over, the platform itself? And then I've seen students actually role play this out, which I think has been really effective. And when you did this recently, Sue, how long did it take, would you say?
I did the whole thing. Well, I just did this thinking routine and I did the whole thing in about 10 minutes, but it prompted many new questions. And we could have gone on. We did a lot of, as you'll see in the next slide, we did a lot of what ifs, right? We complicated the discussion. They brought in the complications. What if, right? What if the scenario, we're a little bit different, right? What if Daryl had posted a public apology to Jared right after sharing the video? Or what if Jared had posted a rude comment and he was doing this in retaliation, right? So they didn't come up with those exact ones, but they were talking about these complexities and some of the nuances. And I thought that's what was amazing, is it drove a whole new conversation. We could have done this for a half an hour easily.
I love that. And I love the what ifs too, that they're generating themselves, or we also provide a bunch of different what ifs that we call the complicate questions. So I think going back to kind of our timing and how we're using this. So you said, you probably spent 10 to 15 minutes. It could have kept going, but you could also keep it tight and short. And this, it sounded to me like it really got the conversation going and it brought that deeper reflection. And do you remember, Sue, what period was this, in an advisory period, a career and college readiness? What kind of class was it?
So this class in particular, they were doing this as their, just their morning reflection, right? Their morning warm up. And so, I have done this also with adults, right? Where I've asked them, like, for adult teachers, how would you use this in your classroom? And so they said, I'm a math teacher and I'm just trying to get to know my students. I'm trying to bring a little bit of social and emotional learning into my class period so I have a better relationship with my kids, right? So I've seen this in many different types, used with many different types of teachers, but advisory or, a situation where you already have kind of some of those relationships going, it's probably the easiest way to bring it in. But, if teachers are looking to deepen those relationships and get to know their students better, this can work in any type of classroom.
And I think what I appreciate, and it maybe goes without saying, is that oftentimes it's easier to reflect on someone else's situation before sharing your own. And what I also appreciate with these dilemmas is it allows students to have a space where they're having, challenging conversations in a way that's structured, that's civil. So we're also having all of those great practices and modeling too. And that actually connects me. I want to show everyone now where you can access all of these resources. So if you're on our regular commonsense.org/education, you can go right under here and click Digital Life Dilemmas. And once you're on the dilemmas page, you scroll down, there's all this information about it. You've got those thinking routines and more information that we just talked about. I'm going to go right here to explore digital dilemmas to show you what that looks like. Again, you see you've got a lot more information about how to use this. We looked at a dilemma that focused on relational issues. I'm going to click on the civic issues right now just to give you an idea. So these are dilemmas that use the thinking routine, take a stand. And the last one didn't have a clear-cut question. These ones do. So this one is about a protest where people are chanting and rallying to express hate for another group of people. Someone later gathered pictures from the protest and started sharing them on social media, asking people for help identifying the protesters. Once protesters were identified, people publicly shamed them for their hateful views and pressured their employers to fire them. Do you agree with the practice of calling out the protesters' identities online? Why or why not? And so here we really invite students to think about, okay, what's your perspective? Let's take a stand, then stand back, listen to others. All right, what do your peers think about this? Okay, now let's reflect again after hearing everyone's opinions. Did that make you change at all? And also, does this connect to other dilemmas or other situations in your life? And again, we have those complicate questions.
There are different ways to facilitate each of these depending on whether you are in person, online. I've used different tools to allow students to express their opinions. In real life, I've literally had them take a stand and, spread across a spectrum in a room, depending on whether they agree or disagree, right? So there are many ways. Use your creativity, figure out what your students are most comfortable with and how to facilitate these best.
That's great. Thank you. And I think really the last question is just, what dilemma do you want to start with? Go check them out right now. And thank you so much for joining us.